The black sedan didn't slow down, it accelerated. Jax saw the headlights swing into the alley, twin beams cutting through the freezing December mist like searchlights hunting prey. His brain registered three things at once: wrong angle, too fast, aimed directly at him, at the small boy pointing, at both of them. "Run!" Jax's voice ripped through the night, but Leo couldn't move. 10 years old, frozen in the glare, his worn sneakers locked to the icy pavement. The engine roared louder, closer. The smell of burning rubber filled the air as the sedan's tires shrieked against asphalt. Jax didn't think. He grabbed Leo by the hood of his oversized jacket and threw him, not gently, not carefully, threw him like a football into the narrow gap between the dumpster and the brick wall. Leo's shoulder cracked against metal. The air punched out of his lungs. The car hit Jax's Harley at 40 miles per hour. Metal screamed. Chrome exploded into fragments of light. The bike flipped, airborne for one impossible second, before crashing down in a shower of sparks and twisted steel. The sound was apocalyptic. Glass shattering, engine parts clattering across pavement, the high-pitched whine of something dying. Leo screamed from the gap, hands pressed against cold steel, watching the giant who just saved him disappear into the chaos. Smoke billowed, headlights swung wild. Then the back door of the iron pit exploded open. Men poured out, big men, leather vests, boots, rage carved into every line of their faces. They didn't run, they charged. A wall of fury and muscle, bearing down on the black sedan, now wedged sideways in the alley, steam hissing from its crumpled hood. The driver's door flew open. A man stumbled out, face twisted with burn scars that caught the streetlight, his voice high and desperate. "I have rights! You can't touch me! I have rights!" But the bikers weren't listening. They swarmed. Hands grabbed, doors ripped open. Someone dragged the scarred man out by his collar and slammed him against the hood of his own destroyed car. The sound of flesh hitting metal echoed. Leo watched it all through the gap, his heart slamming against his ribs so hard he thought it might break through. This was his fault. All of it. The destroyed motorcycle, the violence, the smoke. His fault for speaking when he should have stayed invisible. Jax appeared through the smoke, breathing hard, a cut bleeding above his left eye. He pinned the scarred man to the hood, their faces inches apart. "The judge isn't here, Torch," Jax said, voice low and terrible. "And the community isn't scared anymore." Sirens wailed in the distance. Red and blue lights began to flash against the alley walls. And in that moment, as chaos swirled and men shouted and smoke curled toward a black Chicago sky, everything changed. But this wasn't where the story started. This was where everything broke open. 48 minutes earlier, the heating vent rattled at 2:00 a.m., coughing warm air into the frozen alley behind the iron pit. Leo pressed his back against the brick wall, knees pulled to his chest, and tried to become smaller. Smaller meant invisible. Invisible meant safe. He'd been sleeping here for 3 weeks. Same spot, same routine, same desperate hope that tomorrow might be different. The vent was his secret. Most homeless people fought for the subway grates or the shelter doorways. Nobody thought to check behind the dumpsters of a biker bar. Nobody wanted to. Leo wore survival like a uniform. Hoodie 3 sizes too big, navy blue and stained with things he didn't want to think about. Jeans torn at both knees, shoes held together with duct tape that he'd stolen from a construction site, wrapped around the soles so many times they looked like silver cocoons. His backpack contained everything he owned: one extra shirt, a blanket thin as paper, a water bottle, and a photograph of his mother that he couldn't bring himself to look at. He was 10 years old. He was homeless. He was invisible. Chicago taught you fast. Don't make eye contact. Don't ask for help. Don't trust the giants who walk these streets like they owned them, because they did own them, and kids like Leo were just obstacles to step over. The rules kept him alive. 3 weeks wasn't long, but in street time it felt like years. Long enough to learn which dumpsters had edible food. Long enough to know the cops' patrol patterns. Long enough to understand that the world was full of people who would walk right past a child freezing in an alley and never lose a minute of sleep. His mother's face flashed through his mind. Not the way she looked at the end, skeletal and gray in that hospital bed, tubes running into her arms like roots trying to keep a dying tree alive. But before, when she'd smile and call him her little lion, and promised that everything would be okay. She'd lied. Nothing was okay. The diabetes had eaten her from the inside. No insurance meant no treatment until it was too late. She'd waited, hoping it would get better, working double shifts at the diner until she collapsed during the breakfast rush. By the time the ambulance came, her body had already given up. Social services had arrived at the hospital with clipboards and kind voices. "We'll take care of you, Leo. We'll find you a good home." They'd placed him at Oak Ridge Group Home. 3 days later, he ran. He didn't tell them why. Who would believe a homeless kid? Who would care? So he ran and he learned to disappear, and he found this vent behind this bar where scary men gathered, but nobody looked too close. Here he could breathe. Here he could survive one more night. Leo pulled the thin blanket tighter and closed his eyes. Sleep was hard. It meant letting your guard down. It meant trusting that you'd wake up in the morning with your shoes still on your feet. But exhaustion always won eventually. He drifted, halfway between consciousness and dreams, his mother's voice whispering in his ear, "Be brave, little lion. Be brave." Footsteps woke him. Not the heavy boots of bikers leaving the bar, not the shuffle of other homeless people looking for a spot. These steps were different. Careful. Deliberate. Wrong. Leo's eyes snapped open. His heart kicked into high gear. The alley was dark except for a single flickering streetlight 50 feet away. Shadows moved within shadows. Leo didn't breathe, didn't move. Every survival instinct screamed the same word: hide. A figure emerged from the darkness near the parked motorcycles. A man, thin, moving with the calculated precision of someone who didn't want to be seen. In the weak light, Leo caught a glimpse of his face and felt his stomach drop. Burn scars, terrible ones. The left side of the man's face looked like melted wax, the skin twisted and shiny, pulling his mouth into a permanent sneer. The man knelt beside the biggest motorcycle in the row, a gleaming black and chrome beast that Leo had seen the bar owner ride. Silver pliers caught the light. Leo watched, frozen, as the scarred man reached under the motorcycle's fuel tank. There was a soft click, a hiss. The smell of gasoline suddenly filled the cold air, sharp and chemical. The man worked quickly, his burned hands steady. He cut something, twisted something else. Gasoline began to drip onto the pavement, a slow leak that pooled beneath the engine. Then the man stood, surveyed his work, and whispered into the night. His voice carried in the silence, cold and satisfied. "Burn, you bastard, just like you made me burn." Leo's blood turned to ice. The man walked away from the motorcycle, crossed the alley, and climbed into a black sedan parked across the street. The car's engine stayed off, headlights dark, but Leo could see the silhouette inside watching, waiting. Waiting for what? The answer hit Leo like a fist to the chest. Waiting for the owner. Waiting for him to start the bike. Waiting for the spark to hit the gasoline. Waiting for him to burn. Leo's mind raced. He should run. That's what invisible kids did. They ran. They didn't get involved. They didn't put themselves in danger for strangers. But his mother's voice whispered again, "Be brave." The back door of the iron pit opened. A mountain of a man stepped out into the alley. Leather vest over a thick frame, gray streaked through his beard, hands that looked like they'd built and broken 1,000 things. His face was weathered, carved with lines that spoke of hard years and harder choices. But his eyes, even from this distance, were sharp, alert, alive. The man walked toward the motorcycle, keys jingling in his hand. Leo's throat closed. The man was going to die. In 30 seconds, maybe less, he was going to climb on that bike, turn the key, and the spark would find the gasoline and the explosion would... No. Leo's body moved before his brain caught up. He pushed himself up from the vent, legs shaking, heart hammering. Every instinct screamed at him to stay hidden. But something deeper, something he thought had died with his mother, pushed him forward. The man reached the motorcycle. His hand settled on the handlebar. His thumb moved toward the ignition. Leo ran. "Don't touch it!" The words ripped from Leo's throat, too loud, too desperate. He burst from the shadows of the dumpster like a ghost materializing, his small frame flying across the pavement. "Don't push the button." The giant spun, his hand dropping to the knife on his belt in one fluid motion. The movement was pure instinct. the response of a man who'd survived by reacting first and asking questions later. His eyes locked on Leo, and for one terrifying second, Leo saw death staring back at him. "Get back, kid." The man's voice was gravel and warning. "You got 3 seconds to vanish." Leo skidded to a stop, gasping for air, his legs trembling so hard he could barely stand. But he didn't run. He pointed at the motorcycle with a shaking finger. "He cut the line, the man with the melted face. He used the silver pliers. He said you'd burn when the spark hits." The man's eyes narrowed. His hand stayed on the knife handle. "What man?" "The one with the scars." Leo's voice cracked. "He was just here. He cut something under the tank. There's gas everywhere. Please, you have to believe me." The man didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at Leo with an intensity that made the boy want to disappear back into the shadows. Then, 2 words changed everything. Melted face. The man's entire body went rigid, his jaw clenched. Something flickered across his face. Recognition, rage, fear, all at once. He dropped to one knee beside the motorcycle, his big hands moving under the fuel tank with surprising gentleness. His fingers came back wet. He lifted them to his nose, sniffed, then held them up to the streetlight. Gasoline. The man's face transformed. The wariness vanished, replaced by something cold and deadly. He looked from his wet fingers to Leo, then to the darkness of the alley. "Where is he?" The question came out like a command. Leo pointed across the street. "The black car. He's watching. He wanted to see you burn." The man rose slowly, his eyes tracking to the sedan. For a long moment, nobody moved. Leo could hear his own heartbeat, could smell the gasoline still dripping onto the pavement, could feel the weight of the decision he'd just made. Then the man looked down at him, really looked, saw the duct-taped shoes, the oversized hoodie, the backpack clutched in small, shaking hands, saw a child who should have run but didn't. "What's your name, kid?" "Leo." "I'm Jax." The man's voice softened just a fraction. "You just saved my life, Leo." Across the street, the black sedan's engine suddenly roared to life. Headlights blazed on, blinding them both, and the car lurched forward, tires screaming, accelerating straight toward them. Jax's eyes widened. "Run!" But Leo couldn't move. The car was coming. The man with the melted face was coming. And Leo had just broken every rule that kept invisible kids alive. If you believe that sometimes the smallest voice carries the biggest warning, hit that subscribe button, because what happens next will prove that heroes aren't measured by size, they're measured by courage. The sedan's impact threw Jax sideways. His shoulder slammed into the dumpster with a crack that Leo felt in his bones. Metal shrieked. The dumpster shifted, groaning on its base, tilting toward the narrow gap where Leo was pressed against the brick wall. Time fractured into pieces. The dumpster's shadow swallowed Leo, 2 tons of steel tipping toward him. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The gap was closing, becoming a coffin. Jax's hand shot up, catching the dumpster's edge. His boots scraped for purchase on the icy pavement. Muscles screamed, veins bulged in his neck. He was holding back a mountain with nothing but raw will and rage. "Stay down!" Jax's voice was a roar. The back door of the iron pit didn't open. It exploded. The first man through was the size of a vending machine. Bald head gleaming under the streetlight, arms covered in tattoos that looked like war chronicles. Tiny. He moved with the speed that defied physics, boots pounding pavement, fists already clenched. Behind him came Doc, lean and wiry, surgical precision in every step. Then others, 5, 7, 10. A swarm of leather and fury pouring into the alley like a flood breaking through a dam. Vane was still in the driver's seat, trying to throw the car into reverse. The engine whined. Smoke poured from the crumpled hood. The sedan lurched backward 3 feet before Tiny reached it. He didn't bother with the door handle. He grabbed the frame and ripped the door off its hinges. The sound was primal, metal tearing, screws popping like gunshots. Tiny threw the door aside and reached into the car, hands closing around Vane's jacket. "No! Get off me! I have rights!" Vane's voice climbed into panic. Tiny dragged him out like a rag doll and threw him onto the hood of the destroyed sedan. Vane's back hit the hot metal. The air punched out of his lungs. Doc was already at the passenger side, pulling out a second man Leo hadn't seen. Younger, Latino, tattoos marking him as Cartel. The man swung a tire iron. Doc caught his wrist, twisted, and the tire iron clattered to the pavement. 3 seconds later, the man was face down, Doc's knee in his spine. More bikers swarmed the sedan, windows shattered. Someone pulled a baseball bat from the back seat. Someone else found a handgun in the glove box and threw it across the alley, making it useless. Jax still held the dumpster, breathing hard, sweat mixing with the blood from the cut above his eye. He looked down at Leo, wedged in the gap, eyes wide with terror. "You okay, little man?" Leo couldn't speak, could only nod. Jax pushed the dumpster back upright with a grunt. It settled with a metallic groan. He knelt down, reached into the gap, and pulled Leo out. Gentle hands for such a violent moment. Sirens wailed in the distance. Red and blue lights began to paint the alley walls. Jax carried Leo away from the chaos and set him down near the back door of the bar. "Stay here. Don't move." Then he walked back to where Tiny had Vane pinned to the hood. The other bikers stepped aside. This was Jax's fight. They all knew it. Jax leaned over Vane, face inches from the scarred man's. His voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried through the entire alley. "The judge isn't here, Torch, and the community isn't scared anymore." Vane spat blood. "You think this changes anything? My lawyer will have me out by morning. You're just a dead man walking, Jax. You and that little rat who..." Jax's fist hit Vane's face, not hard enough to break bones, just hard enough to shut him up. The sirens grew louder. 3 squad cars screeched into the alley entrance, lights blazing. Officers poured out, guns drawn, voices shouting commands that tangled together into white noise. Jax raised his hands, so did the other bikers. Slowly, deliberately. Nobody wanted this to escalate, but nobody let go of Vane. The lead officer was a veteran named Kowalski, gray-haired and tired, who'd worked this neighborhood for 20 years. He took one look at the scene. The destroyed motorcycle, the smashed sedan, the bikers standing like a wall around a cowering man, and sighed. "Jax, what the hell happened here?" Jax pointed at his ruined Harley. "Marcus Vane sabotaged my bike, cut the fuel line, would have burned me alive when I started it." He pointed at Vane. "Then he tried to run us down when his plan failed." Kowalski looked at Vane. Recognition dawned. "Torch, Vane. You're supposed to be laying low. Judge gave you a second chance last week." Vane struggled against Tiny's grip. "They attacked me. I was just driving by and these animals..." "There's gasoline all over my bike's engine," Jax interrupted. "Fresh cut on the fuel line. Silver pliers probably still in his car. And that kid over there?" He pointed at Leo. "He saw the whole thing. Saved my life." Kowalski looked at Leo for the first time. Really looked, saw the duct-taped shoes, the oversized hoodie, the terror in a child's eyes. "Kid, that true?" Leo nodded. His voice came out as a whisper. I saw him cut it. I heard him say he wanted the man to burn." Another officer was already examining Jax's motorcycle, photographing the fuel line, the gasoline pool beneath it. He called out to Kowalski. "It's been tampered with. Recent cut. This was attempted murder." Vane's face went pale. No, you don't understand. He ruined my life." He pointed at Jax with his scarred hand. 2 months ago he did this to me. Look at my face." 2 months ago, Jax said quietly, "you poured gasoline on Linda Martinez's porch? You were going to burn her and her 2 kids while they slept? I stopped you?" Kowalski remembered. Everyone remembered. The case that fell apart. The witnesses who suddenly couldn't recall details. The DA's fumbled. Paperwork. The judge's dismissal on a technicality. "You got released," Kowalski said to Vane. "Judge gave you a clean slate, and this is what you do with it?" "He had to pay," Vane screamed. "He had to..." 2 officers grabbed him, cuffed him, and started dragging him toward a squad car. Vane fought every step, his voice climbing into hysteria. That kid's a witness? He's dead. You hear me? He's dead." Leo flinched. Jax moved between them, blocking Vane's line of sight. Kowalski put a hand on Jax's shoulder. "Well, he's just talking. Guys like him always talk." But Jax's face was stone. "Guys like him have cartel connections. Guys like him don't make empty threats. We'll protect the kid. Put a patrol car outside his... Kowalski stopped, looked at Leo again. Where do you live, son? Leo's silence was answer enough. Doc stepped forward. He was sleeping behind the dumpster, officer. He's homeless. The weight of that word hung in the cold air. Homeless, 10 years old, witness to attempted murder, threatened by a cartel-connected arsonist. Kowalski ran a hand through his gray hair. Jesus, okay, we'll contact CPS, get him placed somewhere safe while... No. Leo's voice was small but firm. Everyone turned. No? Kowalski asked gently. Leo shook his head, arms wrapped around himself. I'm not going back. Back where, son? Leo's mouth clamped shut. Jax knelt beside him. Leo, if you don't tell them, they can't help you. But Leo just shook his head again, tears starting to roll down his cheeks. The ambulance arrived. Paramedics checked everyone for injuries. The second man from the sedan, the cartel soldier, was loaded up with a police escort, headed to the hospital and then to jail. Vane was driven away in a squad car, still screaming threats that grew fainter as the vehicle disappeared down the street. The bikers started cleaning up, sweeping glass, moving Jax's destroyed motorcycle to the side, documenting the damage for insurance that probably wouldn't cover half of it. Kowalski gave Jax his card. We'll need formal statements tomorrow, kid too. He looked at Leo. CPS will be here in the morning. We'll figure out placement. After the cops left, the alley fell into an exhausted quiet. The adrenaline drained away, leaving only cold and the smell of gasoline and smoke. Leo was still pressed against the wall near the door, shivering despite Jax's vest wrapped around his shoulders. Jax walked over slowly, like approaching a wild animal. He knelt down again, eye level with the boy. You okay, little man? Leo nodded, but his hands shook. Is he gone? Jax's jaw tightened. He's gone for tonight, but people like him, they don't quit easy. He paused, choosing his words carefully. The cops couldn't stop him. The courts couldn't hold him, but you... He put a hand on Leo's shoulder. You stopped him, Leo. You're the bravest person in this alley. Leo's voice was barely audible. I'm scared. Good, means you're smart. Jax stood, offered his hand. Come on, let's get you inside. You're freezing. Leo looked at the offered hand. 3 weeks on the streets had taught him to trust nobody. But this man had held back a falling dumpster with his bare hands. This man had stood between him and a monster. This man had given him his vest, and Leo knew enough about bikers to understand what that meant. Leo took the hand. Inside the iron pit, warmth hit like a physical wave. The smell of old wood, spilled beer, leather, and motor oil. Neon beer signs cast colored shadows across scarred tables, and a long bar that had probably been here since before Leo was born. A jukebox in the corner played low country music, pool table in the back. It wasn't clean, it wasn't fancy, but it was warm, and right now that was everything. The remaining bikers filtered in behind them. Tiny grabbed a broom and started sweeping. Doc disappeared into the back and returned with a first aid kit. Others righted overturned chairs and checked the damage. Jax guided Leo to a booth and slid in across from him. You hungry? Leo wanted to say no, wanted to be polite, to not be a burden, but his stomach betrayed him with a loud growl that made 2 nearby bikers chuckle. I'll take that as a yes. Jax called out to the bartender. Bobby, can you throw together a burger, fries, and chocolate milk if we got any? Coming up. While they waited, Doc slid into the booth next to Leo. He didn't say anything, just opened his first aid kit and started examining Leo's hands. Gentle fingers checking for injuries, frostbite, infections. Leo flinched at first, then went still, letting it happen. Your feet, Doc said quietly. Leo hesitated, then unlaced his duct-taped shoes. The socks underneath were gray with dirt and worn so thin they were almost transparent. Doc peeled them off carefully and examined Leo's toes. 2 were showing early signs of frostbite. Doc worked in silence, applying ointment, wrapping them in clean gauze, pulling out new socks from somewhere. These are yours now, Doc said, helping Leo put them on. No arguments. The burger arrived, huge, greasy, perfect, fries piled high, a glass of chocolate milk sweating condensation. Leo stared at it like it might disappear. Go ahead, Jax said. Leo picked up the burger with shaking hands and took a bite. Then another, and another. He ate like a starving animal, barely chewing, trying to get as much down as possible before someone took it away or the dream ended. The bikers watched in silence. Some looked angry, some looked sad. All of them looked like they wanted to find whoever had let this happen to a child and teach them a lesson. Halfway through, Leo started to cry, not sobbing, just quiet tears rolling down his cheeks as he ate. He didn't stop eating, didn't slow down, just cried and ate and cried. Nobody told him to stop. When the plate was finally empty, Leo slumped back against the booth, exhausted. His stomach hurt from eating too much too fast, but it was a good hurt, a full hurt. Jack slid a napkin across the table. Leo wiped his face. Better? Leo nodded. Good. Jax leaned forward, elbows on the table. Now, Aoi, want to tell me why you were sleeping behind a dumpster, little man? Where's your family? Leo's walls went back up immediately. He looked away, focused on the jukebox. Leo, I can't help if I don't know what's going on. You already helped, Leo whispered. You gave me food, that's enough. No, it's not. Silence stretched. Someone racked balls on the pool table. The jukebox switched songs. Finally, Leo spoke. His voice was flat, emotionless, the way you talk about things that hurt too much to feel. My mom died 6 months ago. Diabetes. She didn't have insurance, kept saying she'd be fine, kept working. Then she collapsed at work and... He stopped. By the time the ambulance came, it was too late. Jax's jaw tightened. Social services came to the hospital. Nice ladies with clipboards. Said they'd take care of me, find me a good home. Leo laughed, but it was a bitter sound. They put me in Oak Ridge Group Home. 3 days later, I ran. Why? Leo shook his head. Leo, because I'm not stupid. Leo's voice cracked. Because I heard things, through the walls, crying. And when another kid tried to tell someone, he disappeared. They said he got transferred, but... Leo's hands were shaking again. I wasn't going to wait around to be next. The booth went very quiet. Doc's hands had stopped moving mid-bandage on his own scraped knuckles. Tiny, across the bar, had frozen with a broom mid-sweep. Every biker in earshot had gone still. Jax's voice was carefully controlled. Leo, what did you hear? Leo looked up, tears streaming now. You won't believe me. Nobody believes homeless kids. Try me. So Leo told him about Mr. Parrish, the group home director with his kind smile and soft voice, about the boys who got called to his office after lights out, about Marcus, 14, who'd kept a notebook documenting everything until Parrish found it, and Marcus vanished to another facility. About the sounds through walls that Leo couldn't unhear. When he finished, the silence in the iron pit was absolute. Jax's knuckles were white where his fists pressed against the table. His breathing was deliberate, controlled the way you breathe when you're trying not to explode. Tiny spoke first. How long you been on the streets, kid? 3 weeks. 3 weeks? Tiny looked like he might put his fist through a wall. Jesus Christ. Doc closed his first aid kit with a snap. We can't send him back. We can't keep him either, someone else said. CPS will put him right back in that group home. Jax interrupted. His voice was ice. Because on paper, it's safe. On paper, Parrish is a model citizen, and Leo's just a runaway with no proof. I have proof, Leo said quietly. Everyone turned. Marcus, before he got transferred, he told me where the real notebook was. Parrish found the decoy, but Marcus hid the real one in the basement, chapel storage, inside a hollowed-out Bible. Jax leaned forward. You sure? Leo nodded. Names, dates, everything. Marcus made me promise that if something happened to him, I'd tell someone. But who's going to believe a homeless kid? I believe you, Jax said. So do I, Doc added. Around the bar, other voices joined in. Me too. Yeah. Kids telling the truth. Leo looked at them all. These scary men with their leather and tattoos and hard faces, and something inside him broke open. He started sobbing, real sobs this time, his whole body shaking. Jax moved around the booth and pulled Leo against him, let the kid cry into his shoulder, let him shake and gasp, and finally let out the fear and grief he'd been holding for 3 weeks. When Leo finally quieted, Jax spoke softly. "You saved my life, Leo. Now let's see about saving yours." Tiny appeared with a sleeping bag and pillow. "VIP section," he said gruffly, pointing to a spot near the jukebox. "Warmest spot in the house?" Someone else brought a portable heater and plugged it in. Doc checked Leo's feet one more time, made sure the bandages were secure. Rookie, the youngest biker, offered Leo a stick of gum with a tentative smile. They made a space for him, protected him, showed him without words that he wasn't invisible anymore. But at 1 a.m., Jax's phone rang. He stepped outside to take it. When he came back in, his face was grim. Doc caught his expression. "What?" "Vane made bail. Cartel lawyer showed up with $50,000 in cash. He's out." The entire bar went silent. "Already?" Tiny's voice was disbelief and rage mixed together. "Charged with reckless driving and property damage. DA says they need more time to build the attempted murder case. Judge set bail, lawyer paid it, and Torch walked out the door an hour ago." Everyone looked at Leo, curled up in his sleeping bag, finally asleep for the first time in who knew how long. Jax walked to the window and looked out at the street. Dark, quiet, empty. For now. "He knows Leo's a witness," Doc said quietly. "He knows Leo can put him away for good." "And he's got cartel connections," someone else added. "Resources, guns, people who'll do anything for the right price." Jax turned back to the room. His voice was quiet but absolute. "Then we make sure Leo's never alone. He's under our protection now. All of us." Heads nodded around the bar. "Vane wants a war?" Tiny cracked his knuckles. "We'll give him one." But Jax shook his head. "No, we do this smart, legal. We expose Parrish, we get Leo protected by the system, and then Vane has no leverage. Going to war just puts Leo in more danger." "So what's the play?" Jax looked at the sleeping boy, 10 years old, homeless, traumatized, but brave enough to scream at a stranger to save his life. "We get that notebook. We burn Parrish's whole operation down, and we make sure Leo has a voice that the system can't ignore." Outside, a black sedan cruised, slowly past the iron pit, headlights off, watching. Inside, the Brotherhood settled in for a long night. Shifts were assigned. Someone would always be watching the door, the windows, the street. Jax pulled up a chair next to Leo's sleeping bag and sat down. Knife on his belt, phone charged, eyes on the door. He'd fought cartels, outlaws, and dirty cops in his 20 years wearing the cut. But the system that failed children, that was the most dangerous enemy of all. And he was done letting it win. Morning came too fast. Leo woke to the smell of coffee and bacon, disoriented, thinking for a moment he was back in his mother's kitchen. Then reality crashed in, the sleeping bag, the jukebox, the leather vests moving around him. Jax was at the bar talking to a woman Leo didn't recognize. Sharp suit, sharp eyes, briefcase on the counter between them. "Leo, come here." Jax waved him over. Leo shuffled across the floor, Doc's new socks warm on his feet, Jax's vest still wrapped around his shoulders. The woman looked down at him and smiled, not the fake smile adults gave kids, a real one. "I'm Maria Cortez. I'm a lawyer. Jax told me about your situation." Leo glanced at Jax. Betrayal flickered across his face. "I had to," Jax said gently. "We need help, Leo. The legal kind." Maria knelt down to eye level. "Leo, I specialize in helping kids the system failed. And from what Jax told me, you need someone who knows how to fight that system. I want to help, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Leo looked into her eyes, saw the same thing he'd seen in Jax's. Belief. Not pity. Belief. He nodded. "Good, then here's what we're going to do." 20 minutes later, the plan was laid out on the bar's scarred surface. Maria could petition for emergency protective custody, but she needed evidence, real evidence, not just a child's testimony about a group home director. "The notebook," Leo said. "The notebook," Maria confirmed. "If it's real, if it has what you say it has, we can move fast. CPS investigation, criminal charges, Leo protected by the court instead of thrown back into the system." Tiny sister Angela arrived at noon. She wore a CPS badge and had the exhausted look of someone who cared too much in a system designed to break you. She hugged her brother, then turned to Leo. "I'm one of the good ones," she said simply. "Tiny tells me you need help, so let's help each other." The plan crystallized. Maria would show up at Oak Ridge Group Home for an official inspection, random, legal, nothing Parrish could refuse. While he was distracted, Jax and Leo would slip in through the kitchen delivery entrance, get to the chapel basement, find the notebook, get out. Tiny and Doc would wait on their bikes 2 blocks away. If anything went wrong, if Parrish caught them, if police were called, extraction, fast and immediate. "This is insane," Rookie said. We're breaking into a group home in broad daylight." "We're recovering evidence," Maria corrected. "Evidence that proves systematic child abuse. When this gets to a judge, no one's going to care about how we got it." Leo's hands were shaking again. "What if Parrish catches us?" Jax knelt beside him. "Then I put myself between you and him, just like last night, just like always." Oak Ridge Group Home sat on the edge of a neighborhood that had seen better days. 3-story brick building, bars on the lower windows, playground equipment that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. The sign out front was faded but still legible. Maria parked in the visitor lot. Jax and Leo circled around back to the service alley. The kitchen entrance was exactly where Leo remembered. Green door, lock that hadn't worked right in the 2 years since it was installed. "When I push, you run straight to the chapel, right?" Jax whispered. Leo nodded, throat too tight for words. Jax pushed the door. It swung open. Inside, the group home smelled exactly how Leo remembered. Industrial cleaner trying to cover something worse, stale food, despair. The walls were institutional beige. Flickering fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Somewhere distant, a TV played. Leo led the way through hallways he'd tried to forget. Past the cafeteria where he'd eaten in silence. Past the rec room where older kids had stolen his shoes. Past the office where Parrish smiled his kind smile while children disappeared. They heard voices from the front entrance, Maria's professional tone, Parrish's oily charm. "Of course, Ms. Cortez, we welcome all inspections. We have nothing to hide." Jax and Leo moved faster. The chapel was at the end of a forgotten corridor. Small room, wooden pews, cross on the wall, basement access behind the altar, a door marked storage. Leo's hands fumbled with the handle. Locked. Jax pulled a small tool from his pocket. Lockpick, quick and practiced. 3 seconds later, the door swung open. Stairs descended into darkness. Jax found a light switch. A single bulb flickered on, revealing a basement cluttered with old donations, broken furniture, boxes of Christmas decorations from decades past. "Where?" Jax asked. Leo pointed to a shelf in the back corner. Dusty Bibles, hymnals, papers nobody had touched in years. He pulled out a thick black Bible, leather cover worn smooth. His hands shook as he opened it. The pages had been carved out, creating a hollow space. Inside, wrapped in plastic, was a composition notebook. Marcus's handwriting on the cover, "The Truth." Leo pulled it out, and for a moment he just held it. Evidence, proof, the thing that could save him and every other kid who'd suffered in silence. Footsteps on the stairs. Both of them froze. "Leo, is that you?" Parrish's voice, soft, kind, the voice that had haunted Leo's nightmares. The director appeared at the bottom of the stairs, and his kind smile was already in place. Middle-aged, slightly overweight, cardigan sweater, glasses. He looked like someone's friendly uncle. "Leo, you came back. We've been so worried about you." Jax moved immediately, putting himself between Parrish and Leo. Parrish's eyes flicked to the notebook in Leo's hands. The smile stayed, but something cold flickered behind his glasses. "I see you found Marcus's creative writing. He was always quite imaginative." Parrish took a step forward. "Why don't you give that to me, and we can talk about getting you back into your room. You must be so tired." "We're leaving," Jax said. His voice was flat, final. "I'm afraid I can't allow that. You're trespassing, and that child is state property under my supervision." Parrish pulled out his phone. "I'll have to call the police." "Go ahead." Jax didn't move. "Call them. We'll wait." Parrish hesitated. His mask slipped just a fraction. You don't understand what you're interfering with. Oh, I understand perfectly. Jax took a step forward. Parrish stepped back. You've been hurting kids. Leo heard them crying. Marcus documented everything. And that notebook? We're taking it to the police, to CPS, to anyone who will listen. That's slander. Marcus was troubled. That notebook is fiction. And you... Parrish's voice hardened, the kind smile vanishing entirely. Are threatening me in my own facility. You're a biker, a criminal. Who do you think they'll believe? They'll believe me. Maria Cortez appeared at the top of the stairs, flanked by 2 uniformed police officers. Parrish's face went white. Mr. Parrish, Maria said coldly, you're under investigation for multiple counts of child abuse. These officers are here to secure the premises. Step aside. This is outrageous. You can't just... We can, and we are. Maria descended the stairs, heels clicking. You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it. One officer moved past Parrish to take the notebook from Leo's trembling hands. The other began reciting Miranda rights as he pulled out handcuffs. Parrish fought every step. This is a mistake. I'm a pillar of this community. I've dedicated my life to these children. Jax leaned in close as officers cuffed Parrish. His whisper carried just far enough for the director to hear. That property has a name, and you're never touching him again. They led Parrish up the stairs, still protesting, still smiling that horrible smile, even as the cuffs bit into his wrists. Leo stood in the basement, shaking so hard he thought he might collapse. Jax put a hand on his shoulder. It's over. He can't hurt you anymore. But Leo knew better. He'd seen the system fail before. He'd watched Vane walk free. Parrish had connections too. Money, lawyers, people who'd make this go away. What if they don't believe us? Leo whispered. Maria knelt beside him. They will, because we have Marcus's notebook, and because I'm very good at making people listen. The emergency custody hearing was scheduled for 48 hours later. In the meantime, Leo was technically in legal limbo. Angela, Tiny's sister, bent every rule she could to keep him with Jax at the Iron Pit instead of placing him in another facility. 2 days, she said firmly. I'm trusting you, Jax. Don't make me regret it. You won't. Those 2 days should have been relief, victory. They'd exposed Parrish, recovered the evidence. Leo was safe, but safety was an illusion. Shadow noticed it first. He'd been watching the street like Jax asked, paranoid eyes tracking every car, every pedestrian, every shadow. Jax, we got company. Black sedan, different plates than Vane's, but same make, same model. It circled the block once, twice, parked across the street, didn't leave. 2 hours later, 2 SUVs joined it. Tinted windows, engines running. Jax watched from the window, jaw tight. They're scouting, counting us, planning. How long do we have? Doc asked. Shadow shook his head. Tonight, maybe tomorrow. They'll hit when we're weakest. Rookie looked scared. We should run, take Leo out of the city, hide him until when? Jax interrupted. They'll find him eventually. Vane's got resources, cartel connections. This ends one of 2 ways. We fight, or Leo spends his life running. So we fight, Tiny said simply. Jax looked at the kid sitting at the bar, eating meatloaf like it might be his last meal. 10 years old, brave, terrified, counting on them. We fight. They came at 11 p.m. Leo was asleep in the back office, makeshift bed, Jax's vest folded as a pillow. He'd finally stopped shaking an hour ago, exhaustion taking him under. The front windows exploded inward, not breaking, exploding. Bricks wrapped in cloth, Molotov cocktails spinning through the air like falling stars. Fire erupted across the wooden floor, racing up the old curtains, spreading faster than thought. Gunfire followed. Automatic weapons, disciplined bursts, aimed at keeping everyone away from the exits. Jax was moving before his brain fully processed what was happening. He ran for the back office, threw open the door, and scooped Leo up. Leo jerked awake, disoriented, terrified. What? Basement. Now. Jax carried him through smoke already filling the bar, past Tiny grabbing a fire extinguisher, Past Doc pulling a gun from behind the bar, past Rookie's wide eyes and trembling hands. The basement door was hidden behind the bar. Old speakeasy entrance from Prohibition days when Chicago ran on illegal liquor and secret tunnels. Jax pulled it open, heavy steel reinforced decades ago for exactly this kind of situation. Down, all the way down. Don't come up until I come get you. Leo grabbed Jax's arm. They're going to kill you because of me. Jax knelt, meeting the boy's eyes. Fire reflected in his pupils. No, little man. We're going to live because of you. Stay here. He pushed Leo through and slammed the door shut. The lock engaged with a heavy thunk. Then Jax turned back to the war erupting in his bar. Tiny had tackled one attacker who'd come through the broken window. They rolled across glass-covered floor, fists flying, blood streaming. The attacker pulled a knife. Tiny grabbed his wrist, twisted, and the knife clattered away. 3 punches later, the attacker went limp. Doc was at the far window, using a fire extinguisher as a weapon. White foam sprayed across an attacker trying to climb through. The man slipped, fell backward onto the sidewalk outside. Doc grabbed a pool cue and vaulted through the window after him. Rookie took a bullet in the shoulder. The impact spun him around. He hit the floor hard, blood spreading across his shirt, face shocked and pale. But he didn't scream, just grabbed a bar towel and pressed it against the wound, crawling behind the bar for cover. Outside, 6 men formed a line in the street. Heavily armed, professional. Vane stood behind them, directing that scarred face twisted with rage. Jax grabbed his own weapon from the office, a shotgun, loaded, legal. He kicked open the front door and stepped into the street. Vane! The gunfire stopped. For a moment, everything froze. 2 sides, weapons drawn, waiting for someone to make the wrong move. Vane stepped forward, flanked by his cartel soldiers. You should have let me burn, Jax. Would have been easier. Now I burn everything you love. That kid saved my life, Jax said quietly. I owe him everything. He raised the shotgun, including yours. Vane laughed. He's a witness. I'm not going back to prison. You're right. Jax smiled, cold and dangerous. You're not going to prison. You're going to hell. Vane pulled his own weapon. Kill them all. The street exploded. Gunfire from both sides, bikers pouring out of the iron pit, weapons appearing from hidden places, years of preparation for a moment just like this. Not because they wanted war, because they'd survived long enough to know war was inevitable. Jax fought his way forward, shotgun roaring. One of Vane's soldiers went down, another, but they kept coming. Professional training showing, tactics Jax recognized from military service he'd never asked about. Tiny grabbed a fallen attacker's AR-15 and laid down suppressing fire, driving 2 soldiers behind a parked car. Doc appeared from the side alley, flanking, a knife in each hand moving with surgical precision, but they were outnumbered, outgunned. Then sirens. Not 1 or 2, a dozen, 20. Every cop in the district responding to reports of automatic weapons fire in a residential neighborhood. And behind the squad cars, black SUVs with federal plates. FBI. Maria Cortez had made her calls. Had brought federal pressure when she couldn't trust local jurisdiction. Vane's soldiers scattered like roaches in light, but Vane himself stood frozen, weapon in hand, staring at Jax with pure hatred. The kid, Vane spat. I'll find him. Might take a week, might take a month, but I'll find him, and when I do... Jax's shotgun blast took out the street light above Vane's head. Glass rained down. You want to get to Leo? You go through me, through all of us, and you're about to spend the next 20 years in federal prison, so good luck with that. Federal agents swarmed, real agents with real warrants, with RICO charges that wouldn't evaporate overnight. They grabbed Vane, slammed him to the pavement, cuffed him with the kind of restraints you don't slip out of. Vane screamed the whole way to the vehicle. Threats, promises, none of it mattered. The ambulance took Rookie first, then 2 of Vane's soldiers who'd been beaten but not killed. 3 bikers were arrested alongside cartel members in the chaos of sorting combatants from defenders. It would take hours to untangle. The iron pit burned not completely, The sprinkler system kicked in, the fire department arrived, and they saved most of the structure. But half the bar was destroyed. Bullet holes starred every window. The smell of smoke and gunpowder hung thick. Jax stood in the ruins, bleeding from a cut above his eye, his shirt torn, his hands shaking from adrenaline dump. The basement door opened. Leo emerged, face streaked with tears, looking at the destruction around him, the bar that had sheltered him, the men who'd fought for him, the price of his survival written in blood and ash. "I'm sorry." Leo's voice broke. I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. I should have just stayed invisible. I should have." Jax dropped to his knees in the ashes and pulled Leo into his arms. "You listen to me, Leo. This," he gestured to the destruction, "this is just things, walls and glass and wood. You," he pulled back, looked into the boy's eyes, "you're a life. We'd burn it 100 times to keep you safe." Leo sobbed into Jax's shoulder while federal agents swarmed the street and the fire department packed up their hoses, and the first light of dawn began to paint the Chicago sky gray. Before we see what happens next, hit that like button if you're rooting for Leo. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, because what Leo does next will prove that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about fighting even when you're terrified. The family courtroom smelled like old wood and broken promises. Leo sat in a chair too big for him, borrowed clothes hanging off his frame, khakis that pooled at his ankles, a button-down shirt with sleeves rolled 3 times, clean but nothing fit, nothing ever fit. Jax sat beside him in jeans and a pressed shirt, no vest, no leather, trying to look like someone a judge might trust with a child's life. His calloused hands were folded on the table, but Leo could see the tension in his jaw, the way his knee bounced under the table. Maria Cortez stood at the front, sharp in her suit, sharper in her arguments. She laid out the case like building blocks: Leo's homelessness, Parrish's abuse, Vane's attack, Jax's protection, temporary guardianship, 6 months. A chance to prove that unconventional didn't mean unsafe. The opposition lawyer stood up, pressed suit, tired eyes, a woman who'd probably argued 100 cases just like this one. "Your Honor, while we sympathize with Leo's situation, Mr. Jackson has a criminal record. Assault charges from his 20s. He runs a bar frequented by a motorcycle club with known ties to—" "Objection." Maria's voice cut clean. "The Iron Sires MC has no criminal enterprise connections. They're a riding club. And Mr. Jackson's assault charge from 15 years ago was for defending a woman being attacked. The charges were dropped." The judge looked over her glasses. Older woman, gray hair pulled tight, eyes that had seen every trick in the book. "I've read the file, counselor. Continue." The opposition lawyer shifted. "Your Honor, just 2 days ago, Mr. Jackson was involved in a violent altercation that resulted in gunfire, arson, and multiple hospitalizations. Is this the environment we want for a traumatized child?" Maria didn't hesitate. "That altercation was a cartel hit targeting Leo because he witnessed attempted murder. Mr. Jackson and his associates defended themselves and the child. The FBI has confirmed this. Marcus Vane is now in federal custody facing RICO charges. Without Mr. Jackson's protection, Leo would be dead." The judge leaned back. "I'd like to hear from the child." Leo's stomach dropped. Maria nodded at him. "You can do this." Leo stood on shaking legs and walked to the witness chair. Someone adjusted the microphone down to his height. The judge looked at him, not unkind but searching, looking for truth in a world full of lies. "Leo, I'm Judge Patterson. I need to ask you some questions. Just tell me the truth, okay?" Leo nodded. "Do you feel safe with Mr. Jackson?" Leo's voice came out small. "Yes." "Can you tell me why?" Leo looked at Jax, sitting at the table with his hands still folded, eyes steady. "He's the first person who ever asked if I was okay. And meant it." Judge Patterson made a note. "What about the violence? The fire at the bar? That must have been scary." Leo's hands gripped the armrests. "They came for me, the bad men, because I saw what they did. And Jax—" His voice cracked. "Jax stood between. That's what dads do, right?" The courtroom went silent. Leo hadn't meant to say it. The word just slipped out. "Dads." He looked at Jax and saw the man's jaw tighten, saw him blink hard, saw something break open in his expression. Judge Patterson leaned forward. "Leo, Mr. Jackson isn't your father." "I know." Leo's voice was stronger now, "but he acts like one. He gave me food when I was starving. He gave me his vest when I was cold. He fought for me when everyone else looked away." Tears started rolling down his cheeks. "My mom told me that family is people who show up. Jax shows up every day. That's more than anyone else ever did." The opposition lawyer stood. "Your Honor, the child is clearly emotionally attached, but emotion isn't—" "Sit down." Judge Patterson's voice was steel. "I want to hear from the other witnesses." Doc testified first. Wiry, tattooed, surprisingly articulate. He described Leo's medical condition when they found him: malnourished, frostbite, dehydrated. He described the treatment, the improvement, the regular checkups. "Kid's gained 12 pounds in 2 weeks," Doc said. "He's healthy, he's thriving, and he smiles now. That might not sound like much, but for a kid who's been through what he's been through, that's everything." Angela took the stand next. Tiny's sister, the CPS worker who'd bent every rule to give Leo a chance. "I've inspected Mr. Jackson's home 3 times. It's small, but it's clean, safe. The refrigerator is stocked. Leo has his own room, his own bed." She paused. "Your Honor, I've placed kids in foster homes that looked perfect on paper and were nightmares behind closed doors, and I've seen unconventional placements that saved lives. This is one of those. It's not traditional, but it's safe, and it's loving." Then Tiny took the stand. The big man looked uncomfortable in dress clothes, like a bear stuffed into a suit, but when he spoke, his voice was clear. "We're not perfect. We've made mistakes. We've got records and ink and bikes that scare people who don't know us." He looked at Leo. "But we're present, and for a kid like Leo, present is everything. He needs people who won't give up on him, won't shuffle him through the system, won't treat him like a problem to be solved. We see him. We show up. That's what he deserves." Judge Patterson reviewed her notes for a long time. The courtroom waited in suffocating silence. Finally, she spoke. "I'm granting temporary guardianship to Mr. Jackson for 6 months. Conditions are as follows. Leo must attend school regularly. He must receive ongoing counseling from a licensed child psychologist, medical checkups every 2 months. CPS will conduct monthly home inspections." She looked at Jax. "This is a test, Mr. Jackson. Don't fail it, and don't fail him." "I won't, Your Honor." 6 months from now, we reconvene. If everything is in order, we'll discuss permanency." She banged the gavel. Court adjourned. Leo didn't remember walking out of the courtroom, didn't remember Maria hugging him, or Angela squeezing his shoulder, or Doc ruffling his hair. He only remembered Jax kneeling in the hallway, eye level, hands on Leo's shoulders. "You okay?" Leo nodded, tears still falling. "You called me Dad in there." "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "Don't apologize." Jax's voice was rough. "That's the best thing anyone's ever called me." Week 1 felt like learning to breathe underwater. Jax's apartment was small. 1 bedroom, which Jax gave to Leo. A couch in the living room where Jax slept. Kitchen barely big enough for 2 people, but it was clean, safe, warm. The first night, Leo lay in a real bed for the first time in months and couldn't sleep. The mattress was too soft, the blankets too heavy, the silence too complete. He was used to concrete and sirens and the constant awareness that danger could arrive at any second. At 2 a.m., he started crying. Quiet, into the pillow, trying not to wake Jax. The door opened. Jax stood there in a t-shirt and sweatpants, concern etched in his face. "You okay, little man?" Leo couldn't answer, just shook his head. Jax sat on the edge of the bed, didn't say anything, just sat there, present, until Leo's breathing steadied. "It's too quiet," Leo finally whispered. Jax understood. He left and came back with an old radio, turned it on low, static and late-night talk shows, just enough noise to fill the silence. "Better," Leo nodded. "I'll be right outside if you need me." But Leo grabbed his arm. Can you stay just for a minute?" Jax stayed for 3 hours, sitting in the chair by the bed, occasionally dozing, but mostly just watching, making sure Leo was safe, making sure the nightmares didn't come. Shopping for clothes was an adventure neither of them was prepared for. Jax looked lost in Target, wandering the aisles like he'd landed on an alien planet. Leo picked out sneakers, real ones not held together with duct tape, jeans that actually fit, shirts that didn't drown him. At the register, Leo watched Jax count out cash, watched him wince slightly at the total but pay it anyway without complaint. "Thank you," Leo said quietly. "Nothing to thank me for. Every kid deserves clothes that fit." Their first dinner at home, Jax tried to cook spaghetti, burned it so badly the smoke detector went off. They ended up ordering pizza, sitting on the floor of the living room because the small table was covered with paperwork, laughing until tears ran down their faces. "I'm a terrible cook," Jax admitted. "I don't care," Leo said. And he meant it. Week 2 brought school. The principal's office smelled like coffee and old paper. Principal Morrison was a kind man, balding, with glasses that constantly slipped down his nose. He looked at Leo with sympathy that made Leo want to hide. "We're glad to have you here, Leo. I understand you've had a difficult time?" Leo nodded, Jax's hand steady on his shoulder. "We'll start you in 5th grade. Get you caught up. If you need extra help, we have tutors." Teachers were introduced. Some looked skeptical when they saw Jax. The tattoos, the rough edges, the biker standing in an elementary school. Others looked understanding. One teacher, Ms. Chen, shook Jax's hand firmly. "My brother rides. Ironsires are good people." Leo's first day, Jax walked him to the classroom door. New backpack on Leo's shoulders, heavy with supplies Jax had bought. Lunch money in his pocket. A lunch packed in a brown bag with Leo's name written on it in Jax's careful handwriting. "You got this," Jax said. Leo wasn't sure. The other kids looked so normal, so unburdened. How was he supposed to fit in when he'd spent the last month sleeping behind dumpsters? But he walked in, found a desk, sat down. At lunch, another kid approached, Carlos. Friendly eyes, curious smile. "You're new, right?" Leo nodded. "Cool. Who's that guy who walked you in? Your dad?" Leo hesitated, then something in him settled. "Yeah, that's my dad." The words felt true, more true than anything he'd said in weeks. After school, Jax was waiting outside. Leo ran to him, backpack bouncing, and Jax caught him in a hug. "How was it?" "Good, really good." Week 3 brought therapy. Dr. Whitney had an office that smelled like lavender and old books. She was younger than Leo expected, with kind eyes and a calm voice that never pushed. She explained that sometimes talking about hard things made them smaller, sometimes it just made them bearable. Leo told her about the nightmares, Vane's scarred face looming in dreams, the sound of breaking glass, the smell of smoke, waking up in a panic thinking he was back in the alley. "That's normal," Dr. Whitney said. "Your brain is trying to process trauma. It takes time." Jax attended the family sessions, sat in the too small chair, hands clasped, listening as Dr. Whitney explained how to help a traumatized child. Patience, routine, safety, never lying, even when the truth was hard. "He might push you away sometimes," Dr. Whitney said. "Test whether you'll leave." "I won't," Jax said simply. He needs to believe that, not just hear it. 3 weeks in, Dr. Whitney asked Leo to draw something. Anything. Leo picked up crayons and drew the iron pit. Not as it was after the fire, but before. The bar intact, bikers sitting around tables, Jax behind the counter, tiny playing pool. Doc reading a book in the corner, all of them together. Dr. Whitney studied the picture. "This is your family." Leo nodded. "That's a beautiful thing, Leo. Family doesn't always look the way we expect, but it's still family." Week 4 brought rebuilding. The iron pit was a shell, but it had good bones. The community rallied, not just bikers, but neighbors who remembered the night the club had protected a child. People who'd seen the news, heard the story, wanted to help. A construction crew volunteered their time. Local businesses donated materials. Someone started a GoFundMe that raised $15,000 in 3 days. Leo was there every day after school, helping where he could. sweeping debris, holding tools, painting walls. The bikers taught him things his teachers never would. Doc taught him first aid, how to clean a wound, how to stop bleeding. You never know when you'll need to save someone. Tiny taught him how to stand up to bullies without throwing a punch. You make yourself big, you look them in the eye, and you don't back down. Most bullies are cowards. They fold when you hold your ground. Rookie, arm still in a sling from the bullet wound, taught him about forgiveness. I'm not mad at the guy who shot me. He was just following orders. Being angry would just poison me. Better to let it go. Shadow taught him awareness. Always know your exits. Always watch the room. Trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it usually is. Each lesson was a gift. Each moment was proof that Leo wasn't just surviving anymore. He was learning how to live. 3 months later, Parrish's trial began. Leo had to testify. Maria explained it gently, but there was no way around it. The prosecution needed his voice. Marcus's notebook was evidence, but Leo was the witness who'd lived it. Jax couldn't go into the courtroom. Witness intimidation rules. He had to wait outside, pacing the hallway, hands clenched, hating every second of being unable to protect Leo from this. You know what you're doing in there? Jax knelt before Leo. You're standing between Parrish and the next kid? That's what warriors do, Leo. They stand in the gap. Leo wiped his eyes. I'm not a warrior. I'm just a kid. You were never just a kid. The courtroom was bigger than the family court. More people, more eyes. The jury sat in their box, faces neutral, waiting to be convinced. Parrish sat at the defense table, same cardigan, same glasses, same kind smile. He waved at Leo gentle, like seeing an old friend. Leo's stomach twisted. The prosecutor was a woman named Davidson. Red hair pulled back, voice firm, but not unkind. Leo, can you tell the court what happened at Oak Ridge Group Home? Leo's voice shook. He described the sounds through walls, boys crying, Marcus's warnings, the fear that kept him awake, the notebook hidden in the chapel. And why did you run away? Because I knew what happened to kids who talked. Leo's voice cracked. Marcus tried to tell someone, then he disappeared. I wasn't going to wait for my turn. The defense attorney stood. Expensive suit, shark eyes. Isn't it true, Leo, that you ran away because you were in trouble? That you stole from other residents? No. That you made up these stories to cover your own bad behavior? No! Leo's voice rose, tears starting. That this notebook is just a troubled boy's fantasy and you're perpetuating... He hurt them! Leo was crying now, gasping. I heard them. Marcus wrote it down because nobody would believe him. And you're doing the same thing? You're calling us liars so he can keep hurting kids? Judge called recess. Leo stumbled out of the courtroom and collapsed into Jax's arms in the hallway, sobbing so hard he couldn't breathe. I can't do it, Leo gasped. He's going to get away with it, just like Vane almost did. The system doesn't care. Nobody cares. Jax held him tight, then pulled back, hands on Leo's shoulders. You listen to me. Right now, in that room, you're the only thing standing between Parrish and his next victim. That's power, Leo. That's real power. And I know you're scared. I know it hurts. But you're not doing this for you. You're doing it for Marcus. For every kid who couldn't speak up, you're their voice. Leo wiped his face. What if I'm not strong enough? You are. You screamed at a stranger to save his life. You survived the streets. You faced down a cartel. You're the strongest person I know. Jax's voice was fierce. Now get back in there and finish this. Leo walked back in, sat straighter, met Parrish's eyes without flinching. The prosecutor asked one more question. Leo, why should we believe you? Leo looked directly at Parrish. Because Marcus believed someone would listen, and I promised him I'd make sure someone did. I'm keeping that promise. The jury's faces changed. Something clicked. One woman dabbed her eyes. Parrish's mask finally cracked. He stood face red, pointing at Leo. You little liar! You ruined everything. I gave you a home and you... His defense attorney grabbed him, tried to pull him down, but the damage was done. The jury had seen behind the mask, seen the monster. 3 weeks later, Maria called with the verdict. Guilty on all counts. 25 years, no parole. Leo cried when he heard, but this time they were tears of relief. 6 months after that first custody hearing, Leo walked back into Judge Patterson's courtroom. Everything had changed. He was taller, healthier, his clothes fit, his hair was trimmed. He looked like a kid who slept in a bed and ate 3 meals a day and laughed with his family. Maria presented evidence. Leo's report cards, B's and A's. Dr. Whitney's evaluation, thriving, resilient, well-adjusted. School counselor's letter, helpful to other students, kind, responsible. Angela's inspection reports, home is safe, stable, loving. Judge Patterson reviewed it all. Then she looked at Leo. Do you want to stay with Mr. Jackson permanently? Yes, ma'am. Why? Leo's answer was simple, devastating. Because he chose me, and he keeps choosing me every single day. Judge Patterson removed her glasses. Permanent guardianship granted, with the option for adoption when both parties are ready. She looked at Jax. Mr. Jackson, this court believes that families are made, not born. You've made a family. Don't unmake it. I won't, Your Honor. Outside, the entire Ironsires MC chapter was waiting. 20 bikes lined up, engines rumbling. When Jax and Leo walked out, they revved in celebration, the sound echoing off the courthouse walls. Someone handed Leo a small leather vest, his size, his name on the back. Little man, Ironsires. Leo put it on, stood between the rows of motorcycles, surrounded by men who'd fought for him, bled for him, rebuilt their lives around him. Home, 6 months after the guardianship became permanent, Leo turned 11. The party was at the Iron Pit, rebuilt and better than before, cleaner, brighter, but still the same in the ways that mattered. Same bar, same pool table, same family. Bikers mingled with teachers. Angela brought her kids. Dr. Whitney showed up with a present wrapped in blue paper. Maria Cortez arrived with a cake that said, "Happy birthday, little man," in icing that looked professionally done. Leo stood in the center of it all, overwhelmed by the noise and laughter and the simple fact that all these people were here for him. Jax pulled him aside. "Got something for you." He handed Leo a small wooden box, handmade, the wood smooth and polished. Leo opened it. Inside was a key. "What's it for?" Jax just smiled. "Come with me." They walked outside to the parking lot. Leo's friends followed, everyone curious. Parked next to Jax's rebuilt, Harley was a small dirt bike. Used but fixed up, painted blue, perfect for a kid. Leo's hands started shaking. Is this mine? When you're old enough to ride on the street, we'll upgrade. But for now, yeah, it's yours." Leo ran to the bike, touched it like it might disappear, then turned back to Jax with tears streaming down his face. Jax knelt. "There's something else in the box." Leo looked back. Under where the key had been was a folded document, legal paper, official seals. He unfolded it, hands trembling, adoption papers, Jax's signature already on the line. "I'm not replacing your mom, Leo, nobody could, but I'm asking if you'll let me be your dad, legally, permanently, forever." Leo couldn't speak, could only nod, tears falling hot and fast. "I need to hear you say it, little man." "Yes." Leo's voice broke. "Yes, you already are." Jax pulled him into a hug, and everyone watching started crying too. Hardened bikers wiping their eyes, Maria dabbing her mascara, Angela full-on sobbing. Later, when the party wound down, Jax and Leo rode together. Leo on his dirt bike on private land behind the bar, Jax beside him on the Harley. They stopped at an overlook above the city, lights spreading out below them like scattered stars. "I want to teach you something," Jax said, "a biker blessing. My road captain taught it to me when I was 16. He placed his hand on Leo's shoulder. "May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May you ride in peace." Leo repeated it, voice steady. Then he added his own line. "And may you never be invisible again." Jax smiled. "Perfect." That key didn't just open a bike, it opened a future Leo never thought he'd have. One where he mattered, where he was wanted, where he was home. 2 years later. Leo was 13 now, taller, voice starting to change, confidence in his step. He lived with Jax in a bigger apartment. 2 bedrooms now, an actual dining table, photos on the walls. He was an honor roll student, chess club, helped ESL kids with homework, volunteered at the Iron Pit's Safe Corner. The Little Man Foundation had grown beyond anything they'd imagined. Partnership between Ironsire's MC and local CPS, emergency shelter for homeless youth. No questions asked, no judgment, just safety. In 2 years, 47 kids had been housed, 39 placed in permanent homes, 8 still in the program, learning to trust again. Leo spoke at youth advocacy events now, stood in front of crowds, told his story without shame. I was invisible, then someone saw me, and that changed everything. His family had expanded, still closest with Jax, Doc, and Tiny, but now included Maria Cortez, who'd become a godmother figure, teaching him about justice, Dr. Whitney, who'd taught him about healing, Angela, who'd taught him about advocacy, and Marcus. Marcus was 18 now, released. From state custody, living in a transitional program, they'd reconnected 6 months ago. The older boy who'd kept the notebook, who tried to protect others, who Leo had promised to help. You kept your promise, Marcus had said when they met. You made sure someone listened. We both did. One evening, Leo stood in the alley where it all started. Same dumpster, same heating vent, but he wasn't alone. A scared kid stood beside him, 10 years old, homeless, shaking with cold and fear. Leo knelt. I know you're scared. I was too. But I'm going to tell you something someone told me. You're not alone anymore. He took off his vest, the little man vest he'd earned, and wrapped it around the kid's shoulders. Come on, there's people who want to help. Real help, not the system kind. The kind that shows up. He led the kid into the Iron Pit. Doc was already there, ready with food and first aid. Tiny had the heater warming up. A sleeping bag waited by the jukebox. The cycle continued, rescue breeding rescue. 3 years after that night in the alley, Leo sat down to record his story, not for a report, not for therapy, but because someone asked him to speak at a national youth advocacy conference. He started writing, and the words poured out. People ask me if I remember that night. The night I screamed at a stranger not to start his bike. Yeah, I remember. I remember thinking it was the stupidest thing I'd ever done. Breaking my number one rule, stay invisible. I remember thinking he'd tell me to get lost. Or worse, I remember the sound of that car engine roaring toward us, the smell of gasoline, the heat of the fire later. But you know what I remember most? The weight of a leather vest, too big for my shoulders, but somehow exactly right. That vest saved my life, not because it kept me warm on a Chicago street in December, but because the man who gave it to me showed me something I'd forgotten, that I mattered, that my voice had power, that even a kid sleeping behind a dumpster could change the world. Jack says I saved his life that night. But he's wrong. We saved each other. He taught me that family isn't blood, it's choice. Every single day, it's choice. He taught me that home isn't 4 walls. It's people who won't walk away when things get hard. And he taught me that sometimes the scariest looking people have the biggest hearts. I'm 13 now. I have a bedroom, a bike, a future, but more than that, I have a dad. And somewhere out there is another kid who thinks they're invisible, who thinks nobody cares, who's sleeping by a vent trying to disappear. I know you're out there because I was you. And I'm telling you, don't give up. Don't quit. Don't believe the lie that you don't matter because someone's looking for you. Someone who will wrap you in their vest and teach you that you're not just surviving. You're becoming exactly who you're meant to be. The rumble you hear, that's not trouble, that's help on the way. Years later, Leo and Jax rode side by side on an open highway, sunset painting the sky orange and gold. Leo's bike was bigger now, a real Harley, but still smaller than Jax's. They rode in comfortable silence the way family does. No need for words when presence says everything. Leo looked over at Jax. The gray in his beard had spread, new lines around his eyes, but still strong, still present, still choosing Leo every single day. Jax caught him looking and smiled. Leo smiled back. Up ahead, the road stretched endless. Behind them, Chicago disappeared into the horizon, and between them was something unbreakable, family, home, everything that mattered. The wind carried them forward. The road rose to meet them, and for the first time in his life, Leo understood what it meant to be free. Stories like Leo's remind us why we do this. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to believe in second chances. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a story, because every view, every share, every comment helps us prove that the world is full of unexpected heroes. Thank you for riding with us today. If you believe that sometimes the scariest looking people have the biggest hearts, subscribe to Bikers Bite. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done? And remember, the rumble you hear might not be trouble. It might be help on the way. Leo learned that heroes don't always arrive with sirens and badges. Sometimes they arrive on two wheels, wearing leather, carrying scars, and offering the one thing that saves lives, a choice to see you when the whole world looks away.